as a .NET nerd, it's always exciting when we get a new version of .NET, and this time we're getting .NET 10. And so I wanted to stop and make a video that highlights the feature that I'm most excited about in this release and that I think has the opportunity to really expand the footprint of the C# and the .NET community. Now, there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in .NET 10, and the team over there has done a wonderful job putting together a bunch of documentation on it all. I'll link to this top level document in the description, but this document links out to all the nitty gritty on all the different areas and the new things coming in .NET 10 for that particular area. You've got stuff in the runtime, stuff in the standard libraries, stuff in the SDK, all the kick-ass stuff the Aspire team's doing, and of course, new stuff in C# 14. But the thing I'm most excited about actually lives in the SDK, and in particular, it's this ability to build with C# and .NET using file-based apps. Now, I've made a couple videos on my channel recently that have kind of been showing this functionality off just in specific domains and specific examples, but I've kind of been trying to do it in a subtle way. But I noticed there was some confusion about it in the comments, and people were asking questions, and they were getting it confused with this ability to publish .NET apps as single file apps. And this is kind of a different thing. So file-based apps is about allowing you to work with .NET and work with C# without really having to be too concerned with the traditional solution and project system that I think from the outside looking in at our community, people can look at it and think it's kind of cumbersome and complex. But in this case, with file-based apps, you don't have to worry about any of that. And what do I mean by that? Well, I think a demonstration will help kind of hammer this home. So let's just gonna dive into a demo, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some of the other subtleties of this new feature set, as well as some helpful resources that you can use to take some next steps if you want to explore this a little bit further and a little bit more in depth than maybe what this video is going to get into. So I'll head over to my terminal, and I want to set the stage just by kind of comparing what the existing .NET C# experience is to things in other languages, namely JavaScript and Python. So if you look at something like Python, if you want to do some one-off scripts, or you want to build some simplistic applications, or if you even just want to introduce somebody into that world, there's not a lot of prerequisite knowledge we need to discuss. We can basically talk about Python as the interpreter, so this piece of code that knows how to run your code, and then Python, the language, which is the actual code that you're going to author that the interpreter is going to actually take and run for you. And so you can get started with as simple of a setup as echo print hello world, and you can send that to a file, call it main.py, and then you can say Python main.py, and boom, you're off to the races. You got a program, you got some apps. Now, we're just printing hello world, but right, we could write arbitrarily complex stuff in this main.py file, and for someone who's newer to the Python world, right, or newer to software development or programming in general, there's not a lot here that's there to distract you. We can just talk about Python, the language, and talk about how you write things, how you define functions, classes, all that good stuff, before we dive into anything more complex. A similar experience kind of exists in JavaScript as well, right? So we can do echo console.log hello world, and same thing, we can send this to a file, call it index.js, and we can say node index.js, and boom, again, we've got a program, we've got apps of arbitrary complexity inside that JavaScript file. If we decide we want to distribute these things or package them up, we can approach that topic from there. But for .NET, it's a little bit more cumbersome, right? So in .NET, we have to talk about, well, if you want to write some C# code, you want to have a .NET program, you need some projects and you need a solution, right? Maybe a solution, but you definitely need a project. So in order to get yourself a project, you're going to want either the .NET CLI, or you're going to want Visual Studio Writer, something that has the ability to scaffold these projects out for you. So in this case, let's use the CLI because we love the terminal, and we'll say .NET new console, right? So right off the bat, now we have to talk about, well, what's console mean here? Well, that reflects a template. And what's a template? Well, a template's kind of a starter point for a project. Well, what's right? So you can tell we're already kind of down a little bit of a rabbit hole if you're someone newer to programming, newer to software engineering, or just getting started on this path. So in order to kind of take this to its ultimate conclusion, we have to obviously specify where we want the project to be created. So let's just go ahead and create it in a directory called old. And then if we actually want to run that code, we need to cd down into that old directory. And then finally, once we're here, we can actually do .NET run, and we'll finally get our output of hello world, right? So from the inside looking out, right, it's like, what's the problem? It's a project. It's a solution. It's not that big a deal. You can learn all this stuff for sure, right? But if we're trying to expand C#, if we're trying to expand .NET, if we're trying to bring people into this ecosystem, we need C#, we need .NET not to handle, not only to be able to handle arbitrary levels of size and complexity, which it already does super well, but we also want it to be able to scale down to the new folks, right? Or scale down even for us existing folks to something that we can use to do one-off utilities, one-off scripts, right? Why reach for TypeScript when we can reach for C#, for example? So in the new world, what we can do is we can actually replicate that same experience that we saw from Python and JavaScript, but now we can replicate it in .NET. So for example, we can say echo console.writeLine. Granted, it still takes a few more characters to print hello world, but we can say console.writeLine hello world, like that. We can send that to, let's say, an index.cs file. Let's not forget the semicolon. We do love and need our semicolons. And we can send that to index.cs. And then we can say .NET index.cs. And there we are. So again, this is a way of making C# and .NET scale down, right? Simplify. Granted, there's a lot of magic happening behind the scenes that's still leveraging the project-based workflow that we've all been used to, but now you don't have to concern yourself with that. You don't have to worry about that. You can just focus on introducing someone to C#, or you can just focus on writing that script that you need to write without getting into all those other complexities. Now, this functionality and this feature does support a lot of the things that you've come to love and know in the .NET in the C# world. You can reference other projects, you can reference packages, you can do all that. You can set different project properties that you would normally set as part of your CSproj file. All that stuff is supported in this file-based app, and there's plans to continue to expand and improve this experience over time. It also has support for publishing your file-based apps as native AOT apps, all the existing C# things that you know and love, or .NET things that you know and love, are there, but just in a simplified version, right? And when that's really exciting to me personally, as someone who's newer or just kind of beginning their career, so to speak, and thinking about how do I get more people engaged with C# and engaged with .NET that currently look at it as being too complex or too cumbersome or maybe too enterprisey, right? The other thing I wanted to point out here is the team has done a really good job of understanding that you might start here. You might start with .NET index.cs. You might build a whole application in that single file, or in the future, maybe multiple files. And then you might say, well, okay, well, I've reached a certain level of complexity where now I want to opt into the traditional project structure. Or maybe you're a beginner and you're saying, okay, now that I've understood some basics about C# and the language, and I've built kind of my initial application, now I want to convert and kind of explore this whole project and solution system a little bit more in depth. Well, the team's got you on that. So now what you can do is, if you have your index.cs file like that and you want to actually convert it over to the projects-based system that you would normally use, now you can do .NET project convert, point it at the file that's kind of your entry point. So in this case, index.cs, not interactive, index.cs, and it'll ask you, okay, where do you want to put this project that we're going to generate for you? So we'll just put it in the new directory. and we'll cd down to the new directory. We'll clear our screen real quick and give it a list. And now you can see we have that classic old, not old school, but existing CS proj file that we all are used to and know and love. Granted, some of those files from that root directory got copied over, but you can ignore that. But if we do .NET run, you'll see we get hello world. So again, it's allowing us to, again, scale down and then scale up when we need it, or vice versa. And then kind of going back to that idea of expanding the .NET, expanding the C# community, it allows us to introduce this ecosystem, to introduce our community to other people outside of it in a very low effort, low key, non-complex way. There's not a lot of prerequisite information that we need to discuss aside from the .NET CLI and C# the language. Okay, so if this has you excited, or as excited as I am about it, chances are you're going to want to dig into this in a little bit more detail. And of course, the team over at .NET has us covered there. They've added a really great piece of documentation that kind of walks over file-based apps at a high level. I'll link to that in the description as well. And then they also put together a really great tutorial that steps through all kind of the basics of how you would use a file-based program, how you can leverage it in different ways, how you can include packages, all the different kinds of nitty-gritty that you would want to know that I'm not going to take the time to explain, nor probably will explain it as well as the documentation could. But this tutorial will walk you through it kind of step by step. And obviously, if you want to go look at some of those other videos that I made recently that kind of are showing off this in the release candidate, you're obviously welcome to do that as well. And with that, I'll leave you. I'll hope that you're just as equally excited about .NET 10 as I am. And I plan to tune into .NET Conf. If you're watching this after .NET Conf, I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, bye y'all.